My name is Madison, and my story begins when my mom married my dad, though he wasn't just my dad at the time. He was also Kayla's dad, having gone through a divorce when Kayla was only 2. Looking back, I have to admit our family situation was pretty unique. Unlike the stereotypical evil stepmother scenario you see in movies, my mom actually got along great with Kayla's mom. They'd chat on the phone, coordinate visits, and even have coffee together sometimes. Kayla would come over on weekends and holidays, and initially, everything was perfect. We were close in age, and despite being stepsisters, we clicked immediately. We'd spend hours playing together, sharing secrets, and doing all the things sisters do. I remember how we'd build blanket forts in the living room and stay up late watching movies, trying to stifle our giggles so our parents wouldn't hear us. But as we got older, things started to change. High school brought new friends, different interests, and slowly but surely, we began drifting apart. Kayla found her own crowd, and I noticed she was becoming, well, less tidy would be putting it mildly. "Kayla, could you please pick up your stuff from the bathroom?" I'd ask, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Yeah, I'll do it later," she'd reply, not even looking up from her phone. But later never seemed to come. Instead, my mom would eventually tell me to clean up after her. "Madison, honey, just take care of it," Mom would say. "She's our guest, after all." I'd grit my teeth and do it, but each time it happened, a tiny seed of resentment took root. Still, I kept my mouth shut. What else could I do? Even then, I was the responsible one, the one who understood the importance of maintaining peace in our blended family. After high school, I threw myself into college life. I worked hard, studied harder, and started saving every penny I could from my part-time jobs. My grandparents, Mom's parents, were always supportive, telling me how proud they were of my independence. After graduation, I landed a good job, the kind with benefits and regular hours. The pay was decent enough that I could start looking for my own place, though renting at first. Every month, I'd put aside a chunk of my salary, watching my savings grow slowly but surely. My parents were supportive too, in their own way. They'd stop by my rental apartment with home-cooked meals and random household items they thought I might need. But it was my grandparents who really helped make my dream of homeownership a reality. Between my savings, their generous contribution, and my parents' help with renovation costs and furniture, I finally bought my own place. That first night in my new apartment, I stood in the middle of my living room, breathing in the fresh paint smell and feeling like I'd finally made it. Everything was exactly where I wanted it, including the antique dining set my great-grandmother had left me and the expensive bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. 6 months after I moved in, Mom called. "Honey, I need to ask you a favor," she said over the phone. Her voice had that sweet, careful tone she uses when she wants something big. "It's about Kayla." I felt my stomach tighten. "What about her?" "She's found a job here in the city. Isn't that wonderful?" Mom paused for effect. "But she needs a place to stay while she gets settled. Just for a couple of months." I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom. She can't afford rent yet, and you have that spare room," Mom continued. "It would mean so much to all of us. You know how hard it is starting out." I closed my eyes, remembering all those times Kayla had left our house looking like a tornado hit it when we were younger. But maybe she'd grown up. Maybe she'd changed. It was only for 2 months, right? "Okay," I heard myself say. "But just for 2 months." "Oh, sweetie, thank you. You're such a good sister," Mom gushed. "Kayla will be there tomorrow." Kayla breezed in with 4 massive suitcases and immediately started unpacking, by which I mean she started throwing her clothes everywhere. Within an hour, my pristine living room looked like a clothing bomb had exploded. That night, I came home from work to find dirty dishes piled in the sink and half-eaten takeout containers scattered across the kitchen counter. Kayla was sprawled on my couch, watching TV. "Hey, could you wash your dishes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "I'll get to it," she said, not looking away from the screen. She never got to it. Days passed, and the situation only got worse. One morning, I opened my closet to find several of my favorite outfits missing. I found them later, in Kayla's room, crumpled on the floor. "What the hell, Kayla?" I confronted her. "Why are you taking my clothes without asking?" She rolled her eyes. "Come on, we're the same size. Don't be so uptight about it. We're sisters, remember?" "Sisters ask permission," I muttered, but she was already walking away. The final straw was the food situation. I'd always enjoyed cooking, making enough for leftovers to take to work the next day. But now, I'd come home to find everything I'd made the night before completely gone, with nothing prepared in return. "Kayla, you can't keep eating all the food without contributing," I said one evening, standing in front of my empty fridge. She looked up from her phone, annoyed. "I'm a guest here, Madison. You're the host, you're supposed to take care of your guests. Besides, this isn't even my kitchen. Guest or not, you need to help out," I insisted. "Whatever," she shrugged. "If you're going to be so weird about it, I'll just order takeout." I stood there, watching her scroll through her delivery apps, feeling my blood pressure rise. This wasn't what I'd signed up for. But every time I thought about confronting her more seriously, I heard my mom's voice in my head, "You're such a good sister." 2 weeks into this nightmare of cohabitation, I was already counting down the days until my apartment would be mine again. Work had been particularly rough that day, and all I wanted was to come home, heat up some leftovers, if there were any, and collapse on my couch. Instead, I walked into darkness. At first, I thought maybe Kayla had finally gone out for the evening, giving me some peace and quiet. But then I noticed the flickering light coming from my living room. As I turned the corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, at my dining table, using my great-grandmother's antique dining set that I barely used myself because of how precious it was to me, sat Kayla and some guy I'd never seen before. Candles were lit everywhere, creating what was supposed to be a romantic atmosphere. They were leaning in close to each other, giggling and kissing between bites of what looked like takeout arranged on my family heirlooms. But what really made my blood boil was the open bottle on the table, my bottle. The expensive wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, now half empty between these two strangers. I slapped the light switch on. "What the hell is this?" Kayla jumped, then rolled her eyes when she saw it was me. "Oh my God, Madison, you scared us." "Who is this?" I demanded, pointing at the guy who was now giving me an annoyed look. "And why are you using my great-grandmother's china? And that wine was expensive and saved for a special occasion." "This is Derek," Kayla said casually, as if this was all perfectly normal. "And this is a special occasion, it's our third date." "I don't care if it's your wedding dinner. You have no right to bring strangers into my home without asking, and you definitely have no right to use my things without permission." Derek cleared his throat. "Hey, we're trying to have a romantic evening here. Could you give us some privacy? Maybe go grab coffee somewhere or stay at a friend's place tonight?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me?" "Yeah," Kayla chimed in, wrapping an arm around Derek's shoulders. "We'd appreciate some alone time. It's not cool to crash someone's date like this." "Crash someone's date? This is my apartment. Come on, sis," Kayla whined. "Don't be such a buzzkill. We just want to spend some quality time together." "Quality time? Get out." I pointed at Derek. "You need to leave right now." "Or what?" Derek smirked. "Or I'm calling the police and having you removed for trespassing." "You wouldn't dare," Kayla gasped. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. "Try me." Derek's smirk vanished. He stood up, grabbing his jacket. "Whatever. This is ridiculous, I'm out of here." "Derek, wait," Kayla called after him as he headed for the door. She turned to glare at me. "Thanks a lot, Madison. Thanks for ruining everything." She grabbed her purse and stormed out after him, slamming the door so hard my pictures rattled on the walls. My phone rang early the next morning. Mom's name flashed across the screen, and I already knew this wasn't going to be good. How could you? She started before I could even say hello. Your own sister. Mom, let me explain. Explain what? How you humiliated that poor girl in front of her date. How you threatened to call the police on her. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Did she tell you she was using great-grandma's china? Or that she opened my expensive wine without asking? Oh, Madison, Mom's voice dripped with disappointment. When did you become so selfish? So arrogant? Your sister is trying to build a life here, and you're treating her like a criminal. She brought a complete stranger into my home without. She's an unhappy girl who needs her family's support right now. But clearly, you're too wrapped up in your own little world to see that. Before I could defend myself further, Mom hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling a mixture of anger and hurt bubbling up inside me. But I didn't have long to process, because barely an hour later, my phone rang again. This time it was Kayla's mom. Madison, her voice was sharp. We need to talk about your behavior. My behavior? I couldn't help but laugh. What about Kayla's behavior? You know, ever since you bought that apartment, you've changed. Become arrogant, selfish. That's not fair. Not fair? I'll tell you what's not fair. Have you forgotten when you and your mother first moved here? You stayed at our house for 2 weeks. Kayla and I treated you both with nothing but respect. We didn't kick you out or threaten to call the police on you. That was completely different, I protested. We didn't trash your house or use your personal belongings without permission. Look, I come home exhausted from work every day, and instead of resting, I'm cleaning up after Kayla. She doesn't wash dishes, doesn't do laundry. You're being too strict with her, Kayla's mom cut me off. She tells me how hard it is living with you, how biased you are against her. These are little things, Madison. You need to stop being so uptight about every little thing. Little things? It's about basic respect. She doesn't appreciate anything I do, doesn't respect my home or my belongings. She's your sister. Well, if she doesn't like living with me, she's welcome to leave my apartment right now. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. I see, Kayla's mom's voice turned ice cold. I'll be speaking to your father and mother about this. Don't think this is over. The line went dead. I sat there, my hands shaking with frustration. How had I become the villain in this story? All I wanted was some basic respect and consideration in my own home. Was that really too much to ask? My phone rang again a few hours later. Mom's name flashed on the screen for the second time that day. I almost didn't answer, but I knew ignoring her would only make things worse. My finger hovered over the decline button for a moment before I finally accepted the call, bracing myself for what was coming. What is wrong with you? She didn't even say hello. I just got off the phone with Kayla's mother. She's incredibly upset. I slumped onto my couch, feeling a headache starting to form. Mom, do you have any idea how hard I've worked to maintain this relationship with her? Your father's ex-wife and I have always gotten along wonderfully. I'm proud of that. And now you're ruining everything. Do you know how rare it is for divorced families to get along like we do? I'm ruining everything? I sat up straight, my voice rising. Mom, you promised me Kayla wouldn't interfere with my life. You said I'd barely see her because she'd be at work all day. Well, guess what? It's been 2 weeks, and she hasn't gone to a single job interview. Not one. She's looking. No, she's not. She stays home all day, making a mess of my apartment, and bringing random guys over. You want to know what she's really doing? She sits on my couch all day watching TV shows and ordering takeout. She doesn't wash her clothes, doesn't cook, doesn't clean, won't even wash a single dish. Every day I come home from work to complete chaos. Do you know what it's like to work a full day and come home to find your kitchen destroyed and all your food eaten? Honey, Mom's voice took on that condescending tone I hated, the one she used when she thought she was being the voice of reason. Kayla isn't used to living independently. She doesn't know how to do these things yet. She's never had to take care of herself before. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I paced around my living room, stepping over Kayla's discarded shoes. She's an adult, Mom. She should know how to wash a dish. These aren't complicated skills we're talking about. This is basic human courtesy. You're the hostess, Madison. It's your responsibility to be hospitable and take care of your guests. This attitude of yours. I didn't raise you to be like this. I raised you to be generous and kind, especially to family. I felt the frustration building in my chest as my mother continued lecturing me about hospitality and family duty. Every word just reminded me of the constant disrespect I'd been enduring in my own home. The wine stains on my carpet caught my eye, remnants from Kayla's romantic dinner, and something inside me finally snapped. You know what, Mom? I interrupted her mid-sentence, my voice rising with every word. I'm done trying to explain this to you. I'm done being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who has to accommodate everything. I'm just completely tired of. I took a deep breath, my next words coming out in a burst of anger. I'm tired of Kayla behaving like a pig in my house. The moment those words left my mouth, I heard a small gasp behind me. My stomach dropped as I slowly turned around. There was Kayla, standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes wide. She must have come back to get something and heard everything. The look on her face made my anger evaporate instantly, replaced by a sickening wave of guilt. Kayla, I started, but she was already turning away. Madison, what's happening? My mom's voice was still coming through the phone, but I barely heard her. I watched, frozen in place, as Kayla walked straight to her room. I could hear her opening drawers and moving around. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, she emerged with her suitcases, the same ones she'd arrived with just 2 weeks ago. She didn't look at me as she walked past, didn't say a word. The only sound was the rolling of her suitcase wheels across my hardwood floors and then the soft click of the front door closing behind her. I stood there in the sudden silence, my phone still in my hand, my mother's voice a distant murmur. I hung up without saying goodbye. The following days were eerily quiet. No calls from my mother, no angry messages from Kayla's mom, nothing. The silence was worse than the arguing had been. I knew Kayla must have told her mother what happened, and her mother must have told mine, but no one was saying anything to me. The weight of that silence pressed down on me every day as I moved through my now spotless apartment. A week passed like this, until there was a knock at my door one evening. I opened it to find both my parents standing there. Mom's face was set in that expression I remembered from childhood, the one that meant I was in serious trouble. Dad looked tired. They came in, and Mom didn't waste any time. Do you have any idea what you've done? She started, pacing my living room. Calling your sister a pig? Making her feel so unwelcome that she had to leave in the middle of the night? I didn't raise you to be cruel, Madison. She continued listing my sins, each one delivered like a prosecutor at trial. I noticed Dad hadn't said anything yet, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking around my apartment. Mom noticed too. She turned to him suddenly. Why are you just standing there silent? Say something to your daughter. Tell her how disappointed you are. Dad cleared his throat, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Actually, he said slowly, I think both of our daughters are wrong in this situation. What? Mom and I said simultaneously. Madison, he turned to me, his voice gentle but firm, calling your sister a pig was wrong. It was hurtful, and it's the reason she left. You need to apologize for that. I nodded, feeling the shame fresh again. But, he continued, holding up a hand as Mom started to speak, I otherwise support Madison in this. Kayla needs to learn to behave like an adult, like an independent person. Maybe it will be the push she needs to start taking responsibility for her own life. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for our children is to let them face the consequences of their actions. My mother's face turned red. Oh, so now you want to parent? Where were you when I was helping Kayla find a job? When I was coordinating with her mother? Why do I have to take care of your eldest daughter more than you do? That's not fair, Dad started, but Mom cut him off. You know what's not fair? You sitting back silent all these years while I worked to keep this family together. Well, congratulations, now you can deal with your daughters yourself. Then she turned back to me, her anger finding a new target. And you? You think you can just throw your sister out whenever you feel like it? This is my property, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I can do what I want with it. Mom laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your property? You think you did this all by yourself? Almost everything in this apartment was bought with our money. She gestured wildly around the room before pointing dramatically at the bookcase against the wall. That bookcase belonged to my grandmother. It's a family heirloom, which means it's my furniture, not yours. I stood there for a moment, looking at the bookcase my mother was pointing at. Then, without a word, I walked over to it and started taking the books off the shelves. What are you doing? Mom demanded. Packing up your furniture, I replied, my hands shaking slightly as I continued emptying the shelves. I went to my storage closet and pulled out some moving boxes I'd kept from when I first moved in. Madison, stop this, Dad said quietly, but I ignored him. Don't worry, Mom, I said, starting to break down the bookcase. A courier will deliver this to your house tomorrow. Since it's your furniture, you should have it. Mom grabbed her purse. I can't deal with this right now. This isn't the daughter I raised. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Dad stood there awkwardly for a moment. Madison. You should go after her, Dad. He nodded sadly, then followed Mom out. I heard him call for a taxi in the hallway. True to my word, I had the bookcase delivered to my mother's house the next day. After that, silence fell over our family again. No calls, no texts, no family dinners. Just silence. A month passed like this. I threw myself into work, trying not to think about how everything had fallen apart. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up with my dad's number. Can we meet for coffee? He asked. That little cafe near your office? Sure, I agreed, grateful that at least someone in my family was still talking to me. But when I walked into the cafe the next day, I stopped short. There at the table with my father sat Kayla, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. For a moment, I considered turning around and walking out, but Dad had already seen me and waved me over. I took a deep breath and approached the table. No one spoke as I sat down. Kayla stared into her coffee cup, and I focused on arranging my purse on the back of my chair. Dad cleared his throat but didn't say anything. The awkward silence stretched on until a waitress came to take my order, giving us all a moment to collect ourselves. Finally, Kayla looked up. So, she started, then paused to take a breath. I got a job. That's great, I managed. Yeah, it is. And I found my own apartment. It's small, but it's nice. I can actually afford it now with my new salary. She smiled slightly. And, I'm still dating Derek. He thinks it's hilarious now. Keeps calling you the fighting girl. Says he's never seen anyone go from zero to calling the cops so fast. Despite everything, I found myself chuckling. Well, he was being pretty obnoxious. He was, Kayla admitted. We both were. She set down her coffee cup and looked me directly in the eyes. Madison, I'm really sorry. For everything. The mess, the disrespect, using your things without asking. I was acting like a spoiled teenager instead of an adult. I felt something tight in my chest begin to loosen. I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have called you a pig. That was cruel, and I regret it. I was just so frustrated. I know. I gave you plenty of reasons to be frustrated. Kayla reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Living on my own now, having to actually take care of everything myself, I get it. I get why you were so angry about the dishes, and the cleaning, and everything else. Since that day at the cafe, Kayla and I have been rebuilding our relationship. We meet for coffee regularly now, and she's actually become quite good at keeping her new apartment clean. She even invited me over for dinner recently, cooked it herself and everything. Things with Mom, though, that's a different story. Dad tells me she's not ready to reconcile yet. She needs time to think, he says, but I know it's more complicated than that. Mom has always prided herself on maintaining the perfect blended family, and I think my conflict with Kayla shattered that illusion for her. I stand by my actions, though. Yes, I could have handled some things better, but I don't believe I owe an apology to Mom or Kayla's mother for expecting basic respect in my own home. Yesterday, something interesting happened. A courier delivered a familiar bookcase to my apartment, the same one I'd sent to Mom months ago, in a fit of anger. There was no note, no explanation, just the bookcase. As I stood there looking at it, I couldn't help but wonder if this was Mom's way of extending an olive branch. I haven't called her about it yet. Some wounds need more time to heal, and some conversations need the right moment. For now, I put the bookcase back in its old spot, and every time I look at it, I think about how families are like books. Sometimes they need to be taken apart and put back together before they can stand properly again. I remember the day my parents sat me down in our living room like it was yesterday. I was 7, wearing my favorite purple dress with butterflies, clutching my worn teddy bear as Mom and Dad explained they wouldn't be living together anymore. They were so calm about it. No screaming, no throwing things, just two adults who'd fallen out of love, deciding to go their separate ways. I didn't cry. Maybe I was too young to really understand what was happening. They divided everything so neatly. The house went to Mom, Dad moved into a new apartment, and I got 2 bedrooms. The custody arrangement was simple, 1 week with Mom, 1 week with Dad. And Dad, being Dad, made sure Mom and I were well taken care of financially. About a year after the divorce, Dad met Sarah. I still remember the first time he introduced us at a local diner. She had kind eyes and a warm smile, and her son Tommy was sitting next to her, playing with his French fries. "Hi Brittany," Sarah said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Your dad's told me so much about you." Tommy looked up from his plate. "Are you gonna be my sister?" I liked them immediately. Sarah didn't try too hard or act fake nice like some of Dad's previous dates. She was just real. And Tommy, who was 3 years younger than me, became the brother I never had. Around the same time, Mom started dating Richard. He moved in pretty quickly, and I noticed Mom seemed different, distracted, always touching her stomach when she thought no one was looking. They got married in a small ceremony at City Hall, and 2 months later, my half-sister Emily was born. I remember standing in the hospital room, looking at this tiny pink bundle in Mom's arms. Richard was hovering over them both, completely absorbed. I stood in the corner, shifting from foot to foot, feeling like I was watching a family portrait being painted, one that didn't include me. Dad and Sarah got married that same year. Their wedding was different. They made sure Tommy and I felt included in everything. Sarah even let me help pick out her dress, and during the ceremony, Dad made sure to include special vows to both Tommy and me. "Today I'm not just gaining a wife," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm gaining another child to love, and our 2 amazing kids are gaining a bigger family." That night, as Sarah tucked me into bed in my room at their house, she kissed my forehead and said, "You know, Brittany, I always wanted a daughter. Thank you for letting me be part of your life." I hugged her tight, already knowing that while my family situation wasn't typical, I was lucky to have at least one home where I truly belonged. Life at Mom's house changed after Emily was born. It wasn't anything dramatic, no harsh words or cruel treatment. It was more like I was slowly fading into the background, becoming a ghost in my own home. Mom quit her job to become a full-time housewife, and everything began revolving around Emily. At first, I tried to tell myself it was normal. Of course a baby needs more attention. But as the months passed, the forgetting started. Little things at first, then bigger ones. I remember standing outside school in the rain, watching other kids leave with their parents after the parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Johnson, my fourth grade teacher, waited with me for almost an hour before calling Mom. "Oh God, was that today?" Mom's voice crackled through the phone. "I'm so sorry, I was at Emily's Mommy and Me class. Can we reschedule?" We never did reschedule. Richard just picked me up that day, barely glancing at me as he drove home, talking on his phone about work the whole time. Then came my 10th birthday. I woke up excited, running downstairs, expecting at least a happy birthday from Mom. Instead, I found her cooing over Emily in the kitchen. "Mom," I said, hovering by the doorway. "Do you know what day it is?" She looked up, distracted. "Tuesday? Oh, I need to take Emily to her doctor's appointment." I stood there, my heart sinking. "It's my birthday." "Oh," her eyes widened. "Oh, Brittany, I'm so sorry. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay? I just have so much going on today with Emily's checkup." But the weekend came and went, and no one mentioned my birthday again. It became easier to spend time at Dad's house. Sarah always made sure my favorite snacks were in the pantry, and Tommy and I would spend hours playing video games or doing homework together. Dad never missed a single school event, and Sarah often came too, taking pictures and beaming like I was her own daughter. I started spending more and more time there. A few days turned into weeks, then months. Mom barely seemed to notice. When I was at her house, she was always busy with Emily, feeding her, playing with her, taking her to playdates. Richard would come home from work, kiss Emily on the forehead, and retreat to his home office. Sometimes I wondered if they'd even notice if I disappeared completely. After about 6 months of me basically living at Dad's full-time, he decided to make it official. "I called your mom today," he told me one evening. "I think it makes sense for you to live here permanently. You're already here most of the time anyway, and I told her I'd stop the alimony payments since I'm taking care of you full-time now." Within hours, Mom was at the door, all worried looks and loving words. "Sweetie, I've missed you so much," she said, hugging me for the first time in what felt like forever. "I've been thinking about everything, and I want us to go back to our original arrangement. I want you home with me half the time, like before." I was 12 by then, old enough to see through it. The sudden concern, the promises to do better, it wasn't about missing me. It was about the money. Dad's alimony checks were the real reason she wanted me back. Emily was 5 when she started rubbing it in my face. She'd follow me around the house with this smug little smile, dropping her bombs when Mom and Richard weren't within earshot. "Daddy says you're not really part of our family," she told me one day while I was doing homework at the kitchen table. "He says you're just visiting." I tried to ignore her, focusing on my math problems, but she kept going. "Mommy and Daddy love me more than you. Last night, Daddy told Mommy he was tired of you being here. And Mommy said just wait until you turn 18, then the money stops and you'll be gone." It hurt, of course it did. But I'd learned to build walls around that pain. I had Dad and Sarah, who showed me what real family love looked like. I had Tommy, who was more of a sibling to me than Emily would ever be. Still, hearing your own mother basically counting down the days until she didn't have to deal with you anymore, that leaves scars. The years crawled by until finally, I made it to high school graduation. I sat between my two families during the ceremony, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy on one side, Mom, Richard, and Emily on the other. It felt like sitting between two different worlds. After the ceremony, Dad hugged me tight. "We're so proud of you, Princess." Meanwhile, Mom and Richard were already talking about my departure before we even left the school parking lot. "So," Richard said, jingling his car keys, "have you started packing yet?" They didn't ask about my college plans. Didn't care that I'd gotten into the business program with a partial scholarship. Didn't even pretend to be interested in my future. They just wanted to know when I'd be out of their hair. 2 weeks later, I moved my things to Dad's house. I remember sitting in his living room, nervous about asking for help with college expenses even though I knew he'd never refuse. Dad, I got accepted to the financial analyst program, I said, playing with the acceptance letter in my hands. I got a partial scholarship, but... Before I could finish, Dad and Sarah exchanged glances and smiled. We've already got it covered, honey, Sarah said, pulling out a folder. We've been saving for your college fund since you were 8. I spent that summer working at the Silver Spoon Cafe, saving every penny I could. My shifts were mostly morning ones, which left my afternoons free to spend time with my real family. Tommy and I would go to movies. Sarah taught me to cook proper meals for when I'd be living in the dorm, and Dad just kept being Dad, always there with advice or a hug when I needed one. Mom never called to ask about my plans. Never stopped by to see how I was doing. Never seemed to care that her oldest daughter was about to leave for college. But by then, I'd stopped expecting her to care. College life started in a blur of new faces and experiences. My dorm room was tiny but cozy, and my roommate Jenny was nice enough, though we never became close friends. Between classes and my job at the campus cafe, I barely had time to breathe, but I made sure to call Dad and Sarah at least twice a week. They came to visit whenever they could, and Tommy would tag along, complaining about having to carry my laundry basket but always bringing me my favorite snacks from home. Mom never called. Not once. My 19th birthday came and went without even a text message from her. I shouldn't have checked my phone that day, shouldn't have hoped, but old habits die hard. Later that night, I made the mistake of checking her Facebook page. There they were, dozens of pictures of her perfect family. Mom, Richard, and Emily at the beach. Emily's dance recitals, family dinners, holiday celebrations. Each photo carefully staged to show their happiness, each caption talking about family time and loving my family. I wasn't in any of them, of course. I'd been cropped out of their family portrait long ago. I threw myself into my studies after that, determined to prove that I didn't need their approval to succeed. The years flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage to receive my diploma in financial analysis. Dad cheered so loud you'd have thought I'd won an Olympic medal. After graduation, Sarah approached me with an opportunity. Her brother Mark ran a successful investment firm in our hometown, and she'd mentioned my academic achievements to him. The interview with Mark went well. He was professional but warm, reminding me a bit of Sarah in the way he got straight to the point while still making you feel at ease. Your credentials are impressive, he said, reviewing my resume. But I need to be clear, the fact that you're my sister's stepdaughter won't earn you any favors here. You'll have to prove yourself just like everyone else. I wouldn't want it any other way, I replied. I got the job and rented a small one-bedroom apartment near the office. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I worked harder than I'd ever worked before, taking on the projects nobody else wanted, staying late to perfect financial models, developing comprehensive growth strategies for our clients. The results spoke for themselves. Client portfolios under my management showed remarkable growth. The company's revenue increased significantly, and Mark noticed. He didn't play favorites, but he did believe in rewarding good work. The bonuses and raises came because I'd earned them, not because I was family. The first thing I did with my surprise year-end bonus was buy gifts for my real family. A new golf set for Dad, who'd been using the same clubs for 15 years. A spa weekend package for Sarah, who never splurged on herself. The latest gaming console for Tommy, who was still using his old one from high school. Watching them open their gifts, seeing their genuine happiness and surprise, I felt something settle in my chest. I might have been cut out of one family photo album, but I'd found my place in a better one. After 5 years of hard work, I had a solid plan. Every month, I put away a chunk of my salary into my savings account. I'd researched the housing market thoroughly, looking for the perfect property. I wanted something modest but comfortable, maybe with a small garden. Most importantly, I wanted to make a substantial down payment to keep the monthly mortgage payments manageable. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I was at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in years. "Brittany, sweetie. Mom's voice was syrupy sweet. I've been thinking about you so much lately. I nearly dropped my coffee. 9 years of silence, and now this? How are you, Mom? I kept my voice neutral. Oh, honey, I miss you. We all do. Why don't you come over for dinner this weekend? Emily's home from college, and Richard's making his famous pot roast. Curiosity got the better of me. That Saturday, I pulled up to my old house in my new Mercedes, nothing flashy, but reliable and professional. Emily answered the door, looking me up and down with poorly concealed interest. Nice car, she said by way of greeting. The house hadn't changed much. Same furniture, same family photos on the walls, still none of me. Mom rushed forward to hug me, acting like we'd just seen each other yesterday. Darling, you look fantastic. So professional in that suit. Richard, doesn't she look successful? Richard nodded, pulling out my chair. We heard you're doing very well at Mark's company. The family grapevine says you're one of their top performers. Throughout dinner, they peppered me with questions about my job, my salary, my car. Mom kept mentioning how expensive everything was these days, especially with Emily in college. That's such a beautiful watch, Mom commented, reaching for my wrist. Must have cost a fortune. I smiled politely. It was a birthday gift from Dad and Sarah. Of course it was, she said, her smile tightening slightly. They always did spoil you. That dinner turned into more invitations. Suddenly, Mom wanted to be part of my life again. She'd call regularly, stop by my apartment unannounced with Emily in tow, invite me to family dinners. Emily would wander around my modest apartment, examining everything with calculating eyes. This place is kind of small, she commented once. I thought you made good money. I kept my responses vague. It suits my needs. Mom would chime in, but surely you're planning to upgrade soon? With your salary. I'd just smile and change the subject. Something about their sudden interest in my life made me uneasy. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. Emily was over at my apartment, supposedly to bond with her big sister. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her gasp from my living room. Oh my God, she said, staring at my laptop screen. I'd left my banking app open after paying some bills. Is that really how much money you have saved? I quickly walked over and closed the laptop. It's not polite to look at other people's private information, Emily. She ignored my comment. Why are you saving so much? What's it for? I hesitated, but figured there was no harm in telling her. I'm planning to buy a house soon. I want to make a good down payment to keep the mortgage payments reasonable. Emily just nodded, but I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. She left shortly after, making some excuse about meeting friends. The very next day, Mom called to invite me to dinner. As soon as I sat down at their dining table, I knew something was up. Mom had that look she used to get when she was about to ask Dad for more child support. Emily tells me you're quite the saver, she said, passing the potatoes. That's wonderful, honey. You know, Emily's having such a hard time with college expenses. And she'll need an apartment after graduation. I took a bite of my food, saying nothing. It would be so nice if her successful big sister could help her out, Mom continued, her voice dripping with suggestion. Family helping family, you know? I put down my fork. I don't understand what you're getting at, Mom. Oh, come on, Brittany, she said, dropping the sweet act. You're clearly doing very well for yourself. Emily needs help with an apartment, and you have more than enough money saved up. It would be the right thing to do. I looked at her incredulously. The right thing to do? You mean give Emily my house down payment? Well, you're already established in your career, Richard chimed in. Emily's just starting out. She needs the help more than you do. I'm not established, I said firmly. I'm working hard and saving my money to build my own future. I'm not giving Emily my savings. Mom's face darkened. So you're just going to let your sister struggle while you sit on a pile of money? After all we've done for you? I almost laughed at that. All you've done for me? Like what exactly? Forget my birthdays? Ignore me for years? Push me aside for Emily? You're being selfish, Richard muttered, not quite meeting my eyes. A real sister would want to help. A real mother would have been there for both her daughters, I shot back, standing up. I'm taking care of myself first. Emily is your responsibility, not mine. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom sat there, jaw clenched, while Richard glared at his plate. Emily wasn't at this dinner, but I could imagine her reaction when they told her later. Poor Emily, whose selfish big sister wouldn't give her a free apartment. 2 weeks after that disastrous dinner, I had to leave for a business trip to Singapore. Mark had trusted me with an important client presentation, and I'd be out of reach for most of the time due to the time difference and packed schedule. I'll be gone for about 10 days, I told Mom when she called, trying to maintain some semblance of politeness despite our recent argument. Just letting you know I'll be out of contact. Oh, overseas? How nice for you, she replied, her voice oddly interested. The trip went well, but when I landed back home, my phone exploded with notifications as soon as I turned off airplane mode. Banking alerts. Dozens of them. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through them. Account transfer, $100,750. The world started spinning. I rushed home, threw open my laptop, and logged into my banking app. There it was, a massive transfer to an account I didn't recognize. But the name on the transfer. Patricia Warren, my mother's name. I drove to their house like a woman possessed, my banking app screenshots pulled up on my phone. When I pounded on their door, Richard answered with a smug look that made my blood boil. Where is she? I demanded, pushing past him. Mom was sitting in the living room, calm as could be, flipping through a magazine. Oh, you're back. How was your trip? I thrust my phone in her face. What is this? How did you transfer money from my account? She barely glanced at the screen. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. It's right here, a transfer to your account. How did you do it? Mom finally dropped the innocent act. She put down her magazine and smiled, actually smiled. Fine. Yes, I transferred the money. Emily needs an apartment, and you weren't being cooperative. So we helped ourselves. How did you even get into my apartment? My voice was shaking. Oh, honey, she reached into her purse and held up a key. Remember when I borrowed your bathroom that day I visited? It only takes a minute to make a copy. I felt sick to my stomach. Give me my money back, now. Or I'm going to the police. Mom actually laughed. Don't be ridiculous. You won't go to the police, I'm your mother. Besides, you can always save up again. You have a good job, no responsibilities. Emily needs this more than you do. We've already found her the perfect apartment. I'm serious, I cut her off. Return my money, or I'm... Or what? Mom sneered. You'll send your own mother to jail? Please. You don't have the spine. Richard grabbed my arm and started pushing me toward the door. I think it's time for you to leave. This is your last chance, I warned them. Give me back my money. Mom's only response was to wave goodbye with a smirk. Richard shoved me out onto the porch and slammed the door in my face. The police station was quiet that night. I sat across from Detective Martinez, my hand steady as I filled out the complaint form. I had everything documented, the unauthorized transfer, screenshots of the banking app, text messages with my mother about my business trip. Richard called me that same night, his voice alternating between threats and pleas. You need to withdraw the complaint, he demanded. Do you have any idea what you're doing to your mother? Your mother's crying. I hung up, let her cry. I'd cried plenty of times over the years, because of her. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and Mom's arrogant admission to the theft didn't help her case. She sat in the courtroom, playing the role of the repentant mother, tears streaming down her face as she promised to return every penny. "I just wanted to help my younger daughter," she sobbed to the judge. I let my maternal instincts cloud my judgment. I almost laughed out loud. "Maternal instincts? Since when?" The judge wasn't impressed. "Mrs. Warren, your maternal instincts led you to commit premeditated theft and fraud against your other daughter. The only reason you're not going to prison is that you've agreed to make full restitution and have no prior criminal record." She got a suspended sentence and was ordered to return my money within 30 days. I got a restraining order against both her and Richard, just to be safe. Dad and Sarah were with me through all of it. They sat behind me in court, brought me dinner when I was too exhausted to cook, and never once said "I told you so" about letting Mom back into my life. "You did the right thing," Sarah told me after the sentencing. "They needed to learn they couldn't take advantage of you anymore." Tommy, in his typical fashion, tried to lighten the mood. "Well, at least now you know for sure which family actually loves you." He was right. The lines were clear now. I had my real family: Dad, Sarah, Tommy, even Mark, who'd been incredibly supportive through the whole ordeal. And then there were the others: Mom, Richard, Emily, who'd shown their true colors in the most dramatic way possible. 6 months have passed since then. My money is back in my account, earning interest while I house hunt. I've got my eye on a lovely 3-bedroom colonial with a fenced backyard, just 10 minutes from Dad and Sarah's place. The mortgage paperwork is being processed, and this time I'm the only one with keys to my home. Mom still tries to reach out sometimes, through relatives or mutual acquaintances. She claims she's changed, that she's sorry, that she wants to make amends. But I'm done giving chances to people who see me as nothing but a resource to exploit. Yesterday, I had dinner with my real family to celebrate my upcoming house purchase. As we sat around Sarah and Dad's dining table, sharing jokes and making plans for my housewarming party, I realized something: sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. And sometimes, letting go of toxic relationships is the healthiest thing you can do for yourself. In 2 weeks, I'll be signing the papers for my new house. Dad's already planning to help me paint the walls, and Sarah's been sending me links to furniture she thinks would look perfect in my living room. This is what family should be: people who support you, love you, and would never dream of hurting you for their own gain. As for Mom, Richard, and Emily, they can keep their perfect family photos and their manipulative games. I've got something better: a real family, a clear conscience, and soon, a house with exactly 1 set of keys.